Hi, everybody. Welcome to The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. Today on The New Normal, we are talking and having a great discussion on the mighty layer over at den.social. So if you guys aren't already a member, join den.social. All you need is an email address. You can be completely anonymous. You can be yourself, whatever you choose to be. But it is a platform that is on blockchain, and our friends over at Dragon Chain have established that. It is a layer that I purchased and started and launched for us, the Mighty Group, to have, and we're going to play around with it. We're kind of building it. It's going to be a community-owned layer, and we're going to build it together. And right now, my friend I Am is helping me out with it and kind of getting it launched and off the ground. And today we are discussing the Supreme Court decision that came down like a hammer today, the Chevron Deference that got kicked out because it's unconstitutional. So we'll be back right after this. Give us a like and share the video. Hey, I Am.
Thanks for Lisa, how you doing?
Great to see you. You've been doing some work on this. I know our friend Greg Lang from Rivet has been talking about this, whispering about this for months now, maybe more than a year, talking about the Chevron decision.
Right.
And that it's been coming up in the Supreme Court for quite a while, and he's been so excited about it. And now I see why. What a big deal!
Now you see why. Huh? I was kind of like, okay. Well, then it got on the Supreme Court docket. It's like, okay, they're going to hear the case. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be. I didn't have much hope. I guess too black-pilled, Lisa. Too black-pilled. Like, I didn't have any hope for this, but it happened.
It did.
They ruled it unconstitutional. We're going to get into all that, but I got a quick announcement though before we start. Two announcements. One, they put too much starch in my shirt. I feel like I'm.
It looks very nice. You've got a stiff collar. Yes.
The second announcement is I'm not supposed to be on YouTube anymore because I'm in the witness protection program, and my FBI handler told me they're gonna recognize my face. And I can't do this anymore. No,
I'll get you connected with JFK Jr.'s doctor, and we'll get you all fixed up.
Oh, he lives next door.
Oh, okay, good. We'll get you all fixed up.
Anyway. So we'll somehow, I don't know about the Supreme Court, but it happened. The Chevron ruling.
Mom says it says the broadcast is not available, but she has to share the feed. Hold on.
Oh no.
I did something wrong again. Oh, it says visibility public on my end.
Yeah, I'll check on my end. How's that?
Oh Lord.
I got it right here. By the way, World Blockchain Roundtable is Wednesday, not Thursday, because what is this holiday thing on Thursday? What is that?
What? I missed this announcement.
Yeah, well, Thursday is 4th of July, so they're going to do it Wednesday morning instead of Thursday. I think that's what I saw.
Oh, hey, Twitter kicked me off.
I can see my face. I'm live over here. So
Mom says Twitter. X says my broadcast is not available.
Oh, I'm on you. I was checking YouTube.
I thought Twitter was the freedom platform, Elon.
What happened, Elon?
What's happening, Elon? You little.
What's going on, Elon?
Come on, man.
Come on,
folks.
Let's find out. Let's find out what's going on.
I don't know.
Litecoin, Lisa. Hey, no, it's there.
Is it on there?
I see it.
Okay, it's just Mom. Mom's the one that's blocked.
Yeah, it's there.
Poor Nana.
It's working.
Hey, there's my friend AJ Greer. He is a great artist who has a really great program with some friends, and they do a thing that's called something beautiful about art for Something about your art, of your heart, or something like that. Hold on.
That sounds good.
It's oh, well, it's
What?
not on here. He did this picture of me and Mia, but this is his business card.
Oh, cool.
I'll have to, but my picture of me and Mia is hung up over there on the side of my office.
Nice. Nice.
Yes, that was a gift from Bix and Amy for me. So, anyway, yeah. So there were a couple decisions. One of them was, I just want to go over the qualified immunity. Just
Yes, please.
briefly. I watched Meet Kevin to get a quick breakdown on that one. That's a great YouTube channel. I like him. And he was explaining that very similarly, like police officers have qualified immunity. So they can't be held accountable for criminal acts if they are doing an action while they're in service. So like if they are arresting someone and they beat them up, they can't be held criminally liable for that.
Mhm.
In the same way, that's what this happened for Trump, was that if they are doing an official act, he would have qualified immunity if he was doing a presidential act. And so what I think is interesting is if they hold this retroactively, then Obama and possibly the Bushes, the Clintons might be held accountable for some of their actions that were not presidential acts.
Right.
Let's say
Right.
Iran, Benghazi.
Who's to say? Who's to
say what they could be held accountable for that were not presidential acts, but they could be held accountable for.
But it also sets the bar very high for the prosecutor to go forward and convict Trump
Right.
on something. So it's really narrowed the scope of the case in Trump's favor, obviously, which is lawfare anyway. But
there was also a great Supreme Court, another great Supreme Court ruling today that rolled back. It was no longer an insurrection. They have rolled it back to trespassing.
Oh, really? Oh, yes. That's right.
J6 was trespassing.
Right.
And
they were overcharged.
They've overcharged everyone. And so that will help not only every J6er, which God bless them, and I pray for their families. And I think about the ones that committed suicide and all of that. I mean, horrible things. And then the treatment that they've had.
They're political prisoners, face it.
Political prisoners are our own countrymen.
I know.
Horrible. And then that will also help Trump with what some of the charges against him. So anyway, that was another great.
That was a big one. That was a big one too.
Yeah, another great.
Yeah. Well, who would have thunk it, huh? The Supreme Court. Yeah. The Supreme Court's one of those things, like you hear these rulings and like you hear something, it's like, I don't think it's going to affect me. And then others are like, what? How do they rule? What? Like say that recently the Roe versus Wade decision, everyone was kind of glued on that one, which basically moved the right or restrictions of abortion back down to the states, closer to we the people.
But it wasn't just the abortion. It's more about all of the decisions.
Right.
It's about that all or most decisions should be brought to the state, to we the people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This was something a friend shared to me with me. She was like, "This is you." When a friend calls and tells me they're ready to understand the agenda and all the conspiracies that keep happening, that's me.
That's good. That's
running
good. That's
down the street barefoot with coffee
in the snow.
Yeah, barefoot in the snow. I'm ready. Just call me. So I said, "Hit me up. I'll be right there."
That's good. That's good. Yeah, but sometimes we tune into these things, and sometimes we think they're not going to really affect us, and then other times we're kind of shocked because something that they ruled maybe a year, 2, 3 years ago is really has a big impact on our lives, right here, right now, and that's actually what the Chevron Doctrine, the Chevron case, is going to do. It's going to have a huge impact
Yes.
huge, and people don't realize it. And so maybe, even though I'm not an attorney, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just a guy on the internet, and so I'm not giving you legal advice. But this talk, this was certainly a big one. Let's set the stage. Oh yeah, this is
Okay.
the image I put up.
This was so great.
Basically, you got Congress there. Yes, no on the law. Let's vote for it. Vote for it. Yay, nay. But it's an ambiguous law. It doesn't really spell out the details. And so what happens is that it kind of like going clockwise. Then you got these bureaucrats that are in a circle, and they just keep doing this thing over and over and over. And what they're doing is they're writing policy, they're writing the rules, they're writing the regulations. They're then prosecuting what they wrote, and they're acting and playing like they're judge and jury.
Yep.
And then they're also the enforcer. And that's what was happening. And that's what is happening, in various agencies, 3-letter agencies or whatever. And it's affecting you and I and everyone that, because they have the ability to write these regulations and then fine you and collect those, on those fines. And so finally it goes to the Supreme Court, and
they were refusing people the right to a jury trial.
Yes.
Yeah. And they had like internal prosecutors, and then they would have internal little courtrooms and juries, or not juries, but tribunals. Yes. Mm-hmm. And prosecutors, tribunals, and little trials. And so like you have no way to defend yourself. In their little court, their little fiefdom.
Yeah, exactly. And see, so we'll set the stage. First we know the 3 branches of government. We got Congress that's supposed to do their damn job and write the letter of the law, be more specific, right, and not be ambiguous in these vague terms, but be specific in the law. And that,
couldn't you say that they broke their contract with We the People, and they should be fired just on this basis?
Couldn't say it better. Fire them.
You're fired. All of them.
But all of them. And the courts are the guardians. The courts are the ones that are supposed to interpret the law, right, based off what Congress wrote and enacted and was signed into law. That is the job of the courts, to interpret. Now, mm-hmm, I know it's, government 101 right here, what we just described, but it's not for the executive branch to interpret the law. It's for the executive branch to enforce the law.
Yeah.
And that's what, for 200 years, that's what we were doing. We would like to think that that's what we were doing for 200 years. We thought that that is the courts were interpreting the law. But mm-hmm, what happened was in 1984, I can't believe this, but this is what became the Chevron Doctrine. And if you're bored, everybody, listen up, because this is going to affect you. It will actually blow your mind. Believe me. Trust me. The Chevron Doctrine was, I'll give you the before picture. So we just painted it. We had 3-letter agencies that had to go by the letter of the law. They were enforcing the law. And then in 1984, the Supreme Court ruled, which is more left-leaning court, ruled that, no, we're going to go ahead and we're going to defer to the federal agencies. And we're going to let them interpret these ambiguous statutes or ambiguous laws, these vague laws, as long as, now, children, make sure you're reasonable with your decisions. Basically, that's what the Supreme Court was telling the executive branch. Be reasonable. Don't let this go to your head. That's what the Supreme Court ruling thought. That in 1984, that the 3-letter agencies would, they were the experts. They were the EPA. They are the experts in the environment. They are the experts in SEC, mm-hmm, with Security and Exchange Commission, or they could they could hire consultants to come in and tell them more about the agency or more about how these laws should be interpreted.
Right. And if there was any doubt, they were to defer to the agency.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, what happened was from 1984 to where we're at today, the bureaucracy and additional one three-letter agency after another, they're all created. Next thing you know, you've got this humongous amount of bureaucrats
Right.
that are writing policy, they're writing regulations, they're even determining how big the fine should be. They're interpreting the law to how they think it should be written into policy or procedure. And then next thing you know, if you're violating it, you're being called up in these, like you said, like a tribunal. It's not even a real court
Right.
within the executive branch, and they're pounding the gavel in the courtroom and saying, or in this tribunal monkey court, saying, you owe this fine. And like this poor fisherman was paying a $700 a day
A day.
fine, a family business, every time they went fishing.
And if you follow the money, I
Mhm.
can't remember the exact numbers, but everyone should do their own research. Once again, I'm not an attorney or any kind of legal scholar on this, but they're part of the motivation of hitting the little guy and not going after the big guy is that when they do the big numbers, and I can't remember the number, it's like 200 million or something like that,
Mhm.
or more goes into the treasury. But when it's under a certain dollar amount, and I don't know the exact dollar amount, it stays in that entity's funds, or they can gift it to a like their college or a endowment
Right.
or their buddies, maybe the Clinton Foundation. Who
Yeah.
knows? I don't know.
Or maybe they
Something
call me as an expert on, I don't know, coffee cups, and give me $1 million to tell me, so I can tell them what coffee cup works best as an
Something like
expert.
that. Anyway,
But I'm their
follow
chubby
the
bunny.
money on some of these things. It is
Yes.
crooked, crooked, crooked.
Right. So anyway, the translation of the 1984 court ruling was this. That's why I wrote. It says, "Hey, if Congress didn't make it crystal clear, we'll let the agency figure it out, as long as they don't go too crazy." Now, does that sound ridiculous or what? So we had an explosion of regulations and overreach by the executive branch, and it cut out the what the courts are there for. The courts are supposed to interpret the law, right? And that's how, like you mentioned in our previous conversation, you mentioned something like OSHA. This enabled the
Mhm.
large companies to force the jab, on their employees.
Right.
The ATF, little plastic piece, it allowed them to say, "Oh, you can't put that plastic piece in the gun because that virtually turns it into a machine gun."
Right. Right.
Again, it is an interpretation by a bureaucrat and not by a court, not by a judge. It goes on and on and on, wetlands and think of all the jobs that were lost. Think of all the businesses that were
Mhm.
shut down, or the winners and the losers. Like you said, Lisa,
Mhm.
we saw with Eastgate. The winner is the larger corporation or the people who, pay to play, and the small mom and pops are pushed to the side or squashed.
Yeah.
And so,
Walmart was stayed open, all of those, but the little mom and pop restaurants went under. I mean, I have
right,
a friend that he owns local restaurants here, and he lost a couple of his restaurants. Thankfully, he kept one open, his bread and butter, and he was able to kind of rebuild. But it was a real struggle, and several of our little local stores went down,
right,
and
right.
we saw it over and over.
It's sad. Can you imagine how this has been a direct impact on our economy? Now,
Mhm.
I will give them some kudos. I mean, certainly there were some rulings, and I'm sure some fines that were very warranted, and to be applied to certain whatever polluters or whatever it might be, that were, say, upstream on a river or something of that. Nor, I like to think that you know in a perfect world, that's how these agencies were working. But I'm so distrusting and so black-pilled. So fast forward to this past week here, the Supreme Court ruled, in our favor, is how I see it, that they the executive branch was given too much power, and that the Chevron Doctrine was considered unconstitutional. In
Mhm.
other words, they um, they did an end around the court system. we, like say Dragon Chain, who's fighting the SEC, they had to play in that courtroom. They couldn't play in the real courts. Instead, these bureaucrats were judge and jury and enforcer.
Now they did get a jury trial
Yeah.
more recently, and I get maybe it was because of this.
Well, maybe coming down the pike. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somehow, or maybe on a certain technicality, the SEC realized that they couldn't probably win this one. They'd lose it in some kind of appeal. So they allowed certain portions to be the jury. I'm not an expert. I haven't been following it closely, but basically here in June, well, it's last week, Friday, I think it was, or Thursday, when this ruling came down, was that they overturned the 1984 ruling, calling it unconstitutional. So this explosion of growth in bureaucrats and three-letter agencies, now the way they're doing business, I call it business, but the way they're acting has put to an end. That would be considered unconstitutional. And so the executive branch goes back to enforcement, but not dictating the rules and policy. It goes back to the courts. So now, if in the case of this poor family that had a family-owned business, that was a family-owned business for years and years and years of fishing, if they existed today, they would be able to go back and say, no, we want to go to court with this, and
they could choose a jury trial.
Right. And here's the kicker: Congress is the one that essentially didn't do their job, and how it got into the Supreme Court in 1984 anyway. And it was a power vacuum, and they didn't write the laws specific enough and direct even in legalese well enough for anyone to interpret. So the court punted the ball to the executive branch. Well, now it's back. So now everyone can go back on, no, SEC or EPA or OSHA or wherever. No. I want this to go into the actual court system and not in your own little monkey court tribunals.
Right.
And so it's a big win. So it's huge.
And that just shows failure of representation by our Congress, because Congress is supposed to not just make up laws, but write laws that represent the wishes of we the people.
Bingo. Couldn't agree with you more. Because these three-letter agencies, they have their big thumb on the scale, and they're tipping it one direction in their favor, in bureaucracy's favor, in their agency's favor, to collect more money in fines. It reeked of corruption and ugliness, and it just grew the corruption and the regulations to an obscene amount. The overreach has been insane. So this was huge. I can't express this enough, people that are listening. This is huge. We could see a real shrinking down of all these three-letter agencies that have had far too much overreach.
And they are not constitutional. They are charters that we don't have to vote to end them. They can just be defunded and go away. They are not part of our system. They are not constitutional, as we're seeing. We can just defund them and they go away, and there's no need for a vote or any of that.
Jim Montgomery said taxation without representation. That's essentially what this is.
Exactly.
It's a fine. A fine is a tax, and it's a taxation without representation. It's a taxation without going to court and being in front of a jury of my peers, is what it comes down to, which is, he's exactly right. It's taxation without representation. Instead, these bureaucrats are no longer going to make these decisions of, and determine the fate of an individual or their business or the family business. It's no longer in that bureaucrat's hands. It's going to get kicked back to the courts. So post ruling, what does this mean? What's this going to do? I follow the crypto space, and I think this is big because the SEC has had too far of an overreach,
Yeah.
and their definition of, what is or isn't a security and this kind of thing. I'm going to say, no, 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 no.
Well, we've
It goes
seen
back to
them,
the court. I want the courts to decide.
yeah, we've seen them. I wonder how much, there have been, like, I know with Reggie, like they came to an agreement or settlement. So I don't know that that can be relitigated. But there has been so much overreach, and they have swatted so many projects with
Right.
this, with the fines and all of this kind of stuff. I don't know in how many cases that some of that can be turned back.
Right.
Evolutiotech says a court may not substitute its own interpretation of the statute for a reasonable interpretation made by administrative agency.
That's right. That's right. Um, because that's what the court did. It kicked it back to an agency. And in 1984, that ruling said we're going to kick it back to the agency because the law was too vague. The law was too ambiguous. The law was having to be defined by the agency. Now, in the minds of the Supreme Court in 84, they're thinking, well, let me put it another way to kind of address his point here.
Okay.
Technology is always ahead of legislation. Legislation is slow, right? And the court system is even slower. So what happens is, like, say with the advent of cryptos, the crypto space, that's new technology. It's never been seen before. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to apply old laws and old laws that really have no bearing in this new industry. And so the 1984 court says, there are no laws of this, and Congress hasn't ruled, made a law into this. So we're going to kick it closer to an expert to decide. And the expert in this case would be the SEC. And the SEC is going to remember the comment period. We're going to put all our comments, but they don't listen to the comments. It's a bunch of joke. So anyway, what happens is the legislation hasn't caught up to the industry. So the three-letter agencies are ahead of the game. But then the court, this new Supreme Court says, no, you are circumventing the judicial branch.
Okay.
The executive branch cannot do everything. They cannot be all in one.
You cannot be judge, juror, and executioner. Yeah.
I hope that kind of got to his point. But
yeah.
What's going to happen? I don't know post ruling now what's really going to happen here, but I could see a whole lot of agencies and attorneys knocking on even doors of companies saying, hey, have you been wronged by the SEC? Have you been wronged by the EPA? Have you been wronged by OSHA? We'll take your case. And it's going to flood the courts and get the stuff overturned, and maybe, who knows, awards back or undo, punitive damages. I don't know.
Well, I wondered that because
to me, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, as a token holder, as a very token holder, like, that was one of the things. One of my first interviews with Reggie, I was like, well, you never harmed me, Reggie, but the SEC harmed me because I was never allowed to use my very tokens the way that they were intended, because they accused him of things that were untrue and then stopped the project. And so I was like, well, do I get to hold them accountable for my damages? And then they shut down the Very Fair Fund, which they, stole his assets or froze his assets and then tried to give people money for. It was a mess. Anyway.
Right. No,
I never got money from that. Where did that money go?
We've all been wronged by the SEC.
Yeah.
If you hold any crypto, you've been wronged.
Well, and America itself, because of the way they've stifled innovation in America, we've all been wronged.
There's so many projects that left this country to go elsewhere. Think of all the money, the jobs, the revenue, and the opportunities that you and I and others that are listening to this have missed
Mhm.
It's tragic. It's horrible. It
I bet.
shows the bloated disgust I have for this bloated government. Um,
Yeah.
but you
And
know,
that's where they pick the winners and losers
right?
with their
A,
cronies and
I would say a form of justice is not um, formal. And let me rephrase that. A tribunal is kind of like a tribunal of public opinion.
mm,
It's not I wouldn't call it an actual court case. However, someone's going to say, well, wait a minute, the Nuremberg trials, well, those were tribunals that were convened. Well, yes,
and the patent office has tribunals.
right.
They did a great job with putting Coinbase in their place when they tried to overturn Reggie's patents. There was a tribunal of in the patent office that upheld Reggie's patents. So I think that has some standing.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Obviously, it's been an abuse of power, right? We've seen
Mhm.
an abuse of power. So,
For a long time.
so you want to hear my take as an agorist?
Yes. What is the agorist view of this?
Okay. I got a couple real quick notes. I'll try to be very fast, but um, the court system isn't fair. It never is, never was, probably. Lady Justice has got a blindfold, but I think she peeks underneath it most of the time. Why, as I say, it's unfair, or most of the time it's unfair, is because it's the amount of money. If you can afford a higher priced attorney than your competitor in court, I call him competitor. O.J. Simpson is a good example, right? Then follow the money. So I can almost say I care not who writes the laws, because as an agorist, don't want to be a part of that system. I'm willing to use gray markets and black markets to kind of side skirt it, or I'm willing to invest more time and energy in building parallel systems. So when it all collapses, we have a parallel system that learned from things like the Chevron Doctrine, how it was wrong and wronged people and businesses and harmed us all. Um, and we will know not to do it that way anymore, right? So I would rather support a parallel system than give them energy to like Clint always talks about.
Yeah.
So I guess
Vampire system.
I don't want to be part of that system. I want to be a parallel to it. And that would be pretty much my take, because the government is full of lies and cheats and and government's leaders often just is a magnet to psychopaths and narcissists, and that's not my kind of leader. So
I was thinking of the what is it, the on Elf, where he comes up to the fake Santa and he said, "You smell like meat and cheese, and you sit on a throne of lies." Like
yeah,
that to
yeah,
me is all of that. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure, for sure.
So
Um,
there you go. So there you
I'm
go. So it's huge. It's huge.
they're like the
Chevron.
fake
Who would
Santa.
who would
Yeah.
thunk?
One good thing today, Florida prosecutors did release grand jury records on Epstein. So more and
Wow.
more truth coming out. And my husband said that I think he said the FCC, I'm not sure what initials, the something, told all phone companies to unlock people's phones. So I don't know if that's
FCC.
FCC. Okay. So I don't know if
Wow.
that's EBS coming soon. I don't know.
Who knows?
Seems
Who
kind of
knows? I gotta check that one out.
strange request, but check into that on your own because I didn't verify that one.
And
But
remember, Lisa and I are not lawyers and attorneys, but we'll take your case on the Lisa William LLC.
that's
No,
right. I'll spread a little hopium any day.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much again. I am
Thank
for I
you.
am. You guys join us in the Mighty Lair on den.social. The link is in the description. We'll keep doing these and spreading a little hopium and some information. So
Sounds good.
see you guys on the blockchain.
See ya.